My parents said my college fund vanished. We lost everything, honey. Then I overheard them gloating Katan onto to my brother about his fully funded startup using my tuition money. Little did they know I'd already moved all my assets, and the acceptance letter to my dream university wasn't just paper. It was a key, shimmering with promise, ready to unlock the future I'd meticulously built in my head for years. I'm Skylar. I'm 18. And that afternoon, I was practically floating, taping the university's pennant above my desk, imagining the scent of old library books and the crisp autumn air of a new city. My meticulously highlighted course catalog lay open, a roadmap to everything I wanted. Skylar, honey, can you come downstairs for a minute? Your father and I need to talk to you. Mom's voice, usually bright, had a strange, tight quality that snagged my attention. I bounded down the stairs, still buzzing. What's up? They were sitting on the living room sofa, a little too close together, like they were bracing for something. Dad, Reginald, was staring at his hands, clasped tightly in his lap. Mom, Sonia, offered a watery smile that didn't reach her eyes. The air suddenly felt heavy. Sit down, sweetheart, Dad said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. My stomach gave a little lurch. Is everything okay? Mom reached for my hand, her palm clammy. Skylar, there's no easy way to say this. Dad cleared his throat. It's about your college fund, honey. He paused, and the silence stretched thick and suffocating. There was an investment, a business opportunity we were sure was a winner. We put a significant amount in, thinking it would grow your fund even more. And? I prompted, my voice barely a whisper, the pennant upstairs suddenly feeling miles away. And it didn't work out, Dad said, finally looking at me, his expression a careful mask of regret. The investment failed. Completely. We lost it, Skylar. All of it. The words hung in the air, sharp and cold. All of it? I echoed, the floor seeming to tilt beneath me. But Stanford, the tuition, the dorm deposit, everything. My meticulously planned future, the one I'd earned with straight A's and countless hours of studying, shattered into a million pieces. It felt like a physical blow winding me. Mom's grip tightened on my hand. We are so sorry, baby. More than you can imagine. We feel terrible. Her eyes welled up, but the tears seemed reluctant. But what am I supposed to do? My voice cracked. The vibrant colors of my dream faded to a bleak, terrifying gray. All my plans. We've been thinking, Dad said, his tone shifting to something more practical a little too quickly. A gap year might be a good idea. Give you some time, or, the community college here is actually very good. You could live at home, save money. Community college after Stanford? The suggestion felt like a slap. My chest ached a hollow, painful throb. I pulled my hand away from Mom's. You're saying I can't go? Not this year, sweetheart, Mom said softly. We just don't have the funds. We're stretched so thin as it is. Just then, my brother Cameron sauntered in, scrolling on his phone, a brand new model I hadn't seen before. Hey, what's with all the doom and gloom? He looked from my tear-streaked face to our parents' somber expressions. We were just telling Skylar about her college fund, Dad said. Cameron winced dramatically. Oh man, that investment thing? Rough break, sis. He patted my shoulder, a gesture that felt more dismissive than comforting. But hey, you're smart. You'll figure something out. There was a flicker in his eyes, something that looked unsettlingly like satisfaction. A tiny smirk played at the corner of his lips before he smoothed it away. We'll help you look into community college programs tomorrow, Mom said, her voice regaining some of its usual cheer as if the problem was already solved. It'll be an adjustment, but you're resilient. Resilient. The word echoed in my ears. I looked at their faces. Dad's carefully constructed sorrow, Mom's practiced sympathy, Cameron's barely concealed indifference. My heart was a lead weight in my chest. The disappointment so profound it was almost a physical pain. I mumbled something about needing to be alone and stumbled upstairs, their voices following me, talking about making the best of things. I sank onto my bed, the pennant mocking me from the wall. The tears came then, hot and furious. My future stolen. But beneath the crushing weight of grief and despair, a small cold knot began to form in my stomach. Dad's explanation had been vague, full of platitudes and avoided details. Mom's tears hadn't seemed quite real. And Cameron. Cameron looked like someone who'd just gotten exactly what he wanted. Their story felt off. Too rehearsed, like a play they'd all learned their lines for. The next few days were a blur of forced smiles and hollow reassurances. I was supposed to be mourning my lost future, as Mom kept calling it. Her voice dripping with synthetic sympathy. She'd pat my arm and say, "Don't worry, sweetie. We'll figure something out for you. Maybe you can get a part-time job while you're at community college?" Dad would nod, sagely adding, "It'll build character." Build character. Right. While I was supposedly building character by staring at the ceiling of my room, Cameron was practically vibrating with excitement. He'd acquired a sleek new laptop, a top-of-the-line tablet, and was constantly on calls, his voice booming with confidence. "Yeah. The seed money just cleared," I heard him brag to someone on the phone pacing in the hallway. "Phase 1 is fully funded. We're talking disruptive tech, man. Game changer. Seed money. Disruptive tech. My college fund." The pieces clicked into place with a sickening clarity. My best friend Leah was my only solace. "It just doesn't make sense, Sky," she said one afternoon as we sat on her porch swing, me picking at a loose thread on my jeans. "Your parents always seemed so responsible, and your fund was supposed to be untouchable." "That's what I thought," I mumbled, the cold knot in my stomach tightening. "They said it was a bad investment. But Cameron, he suddenly got all this cash for his startup. He's been talking about it for months, but he never had any actual funding before." Leah's eyes widened. "No, they wouldn't." "Wouldn't they?" I asked, the bitterness rising in my throat. "He's always been the golden child, the one they pour everything into." The air in our house became thick with unspoken things. My parents tiptoed around me, offering blandishments and suggestions for local jobs. "The bakery is hiring," Mom chipped one morning, holding out the classifieds. "You could save up." Save up for what? A life I didn't want in a town I was desperate to escape. The final brutal confirmation came a few nights later. I was heading to the kitchen for a glass of water, walking softly as I often did now, trying to be invisible. Cameron's bedroom door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the darkened hallway. I heard voices. Mom, Dad, and Cameron. Low, conspiratorial. "Hi. So the final transfer went through this morning," Dad was saying, his voice laced with a smug satisfaction I'd never heard before. "Your startup is fully funded now, son. Every penny from her education account." My breath hitched. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering against my ribs. Mom laughed, a light tinkling sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh, Reginald, you're a miracle worker. Cameron, baby, this is your big chance. Don't you worry about your sister. She'll manage. She's always been resilient." Resilient. There was that word again. Used not as a compliment, but as an excuse for their cruelty. Cameron's voice, arrogant and dismissive, joined in. "Yeah. She'll be fine. Probably end up at that community college, get a job." It's not like she had any real ambition, not like me. The casual cruelty of their words, their utter disregard for my dreams, my future hit me like a physical blow. I felt the blood drain from my face, replaced by a chilling, icy rage. The grief I'd been drowning in solidified into something hard and sharp. Betrayal. It was a cold, ugly thing coiling in my gut. They hadn't just lost my money. They had stolen it. They had looked me in the eye and lied, their faces masks of concern, while they systematically dismantled my life to build Cameron's. I backed away from the door, silent as a shadow, the glass of water forgotten. My hands were shaking, not with fear but with a fury so profound it almost choked me. Back in my room, I stared at my reflection, barely recognizing the pale, tight-lipped girl looking back. The hurt was still there, a deep, aching wound. But now it was overlaid with a steely resolve. They thought I would just manage. They thought I was just resilient enough to absorb their treachery and quietly accept my diminished fate. They were wrong. Suddenly, a memory flashed in my mind, clear and bright. My grandmother, Iris. Grandma Iris, with her sharp wit, her no-nonsense attitude, and her deep-seated distrust of Dad's get-rich-quick schemes. She'd always championed my education, always told me to be independent. And then I remembered her parting gift given to me on my 16th birthday, a small, unassuming passbook to a private bank account. "This is for a rainy day, Skylar," she'd said, her eyes twinkling. Or for when you need to make your own sunshine. A dangerous idea, cold and sharp and exhilarating, began to form in the wreckage of my stolen future. The next morning I was a different person. The heartbroken girl was gone, replaced by someone with a core of ice. I went down to breakfast and played my part. "Morning," I said, offering a small, tired smile. "Morning, sweetie," Mom chirped a little too brightly. "Did you sleep okay?" "Fine," I lied, spooning cereal into my bowl. I was thinking maybe I should look into those classes at Northwood Community just to, keep my mind busy. Relief washed over her face, so blatant it was almost comical. "Oh, Skylar, that's a wonderful idea. So proactive. Your father will be thrilled." Dad came in, coffee cup in hand. "Here you're looking at Northwood, pumpkin. Good girl. Sensible." He patted my head, a gesture that now felt condescending and proprietary. I forced myself not to flinch. I let them believe I was folding, succumbing to their narrative of making the best of a bad situation. I nodded along to their suggestions, looked vaguely interested when they brought home community college brochures, and even let Mom help me fill out a preliminary application, her pen hovering over the financial aid sections with exaggerated concern. But while they were busy congratulating themselves on my supposed compliance, I was busy. The rainy day passbook from Grandma Iris was tucked safely in my backpack. The first chance I got, I biked to the small independent bank downtown where she'd opened the account. My hands trembled slightly as I handed the passbook and my ID to the teller. "I'd like to check the balance on this account, please," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The teller, a kind-faced woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, tapped at her keyboard. A moment later, she looked up, a small smile on her face. "Certainly, Miss Richards. It's quite a healthy balance." She wrote a figure on a slip of paper and passed it to me. I stared at the number. It was more than healthy. It was substantial. Grandma Iris, with her quiet shrewdness and her disdain for my father's financial acumen, had not only started the account with a generous sum, but had also made smart, steady investments over the years. And I, following her whispered advice, had diligently deposited a portion of every birthday check and babysitting dollar into it, telling no one. It was my secret, a lifeline I hadn't known I desperately need. A wave of gratitude, so strong it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. Grandma Iris, she'd always seen right through Dad. "Never let a man control your money, Skylar," she told me more than once, her gaze sharp. "Your independence is your most valuable asset." She'd been preparing me for this in her own way. My grief for my stolen college fund didn't disappear, but now it was overlaid with a burning sense of purpose. They had taken one future from me. I would build another stronger and entirely my own. The library became my sanctuary. While my parents thought I was researching community college courses, I was hunched over a computer, diving deep into scholarship applications. My grades were stellar, my extracurriculars impressive. Stanford might have been a dream deferred, but there were other excellent universities, other programs. I wrote essays fueled by a quiet fury, my words precise and passionate. I applied everywhere that offered significant merit-based aid, focusing on out-of-state institutions, far away from the suffocating atmosphere of my home. Slowly, miraculously, positive responses started to trickle in. Emails offering partial scholarships, then larger ones. Then one afternoon, an email arrived from a highly ranked university 3 states away. I clicked it open, my heart pounding. "Dear Miss Richards, we are pleased to offer you the Presidential Scholarship, covering full tuition and fees." I read it 3 times, the words blurring through a sudden film of tears. Not tears of sorrow this time, but of fierce, triumphant joy. Full ride. To a place they couldn't touch, couldn't control, couldn't even imagine. That evening, Cameron breezed into the kitchen while I was making a sandwich, the picture of oblivious entitlement. He was wearing a new designer shirt. "Hey, sis," he said, grabbing a soda from the fridge. "So did you land that gig at Coffee Corner yet? Heard they were hiring. You'll need to start contributing to the household now that you're not pursuing higher education." He smirked, the condescension dripping from his words. I looked at him, at his smug face and his unearned confidence, and a cold smile touched my own lips. The Presidential Scholarship acceptance letter felt like a warm, secret weight in my pocket. "Oh, you have no idea," I thought, the fire of my resolve burning brighter than ever. You have absolutely no idea what's coming. The pressure from my parents intensified. A constant low of expectation. Mom left brochures for Northwood Community College scattered strategically around the house. On the kitchen counter, my bedside table, even the bathroom. "Look, Skylar, this creative writing class sounds right up your alley," she'd exclaim, her voice artificially bright. Dad took a more direct approach. One evening, he sat me down at the dining table, a stack of papers between us. "These are the loan applications for Northwood," he announced, tapping the top sheet. "We've pre-filled most of it for you. Just need your signature here and here." I scanned the documents, my stomach churning at the sight of the loan amounts, the interest rates. This was their vision for me, debt-laden, tethered to them, my ambitions neatly curtailed. I feigned reluctance, a sigh escaping my lips. "Okay, Dad. I guess if there's no other way." "That's my girl," he said, relief evident in his voice. "It's for the best. We'll get through this together." Together. The word was a mockery. While I played the part of the dutiful, disappointed daughter, my secret life was a whirlwind of activity. The first step was securing Grandma Iris's money. I visited the small bank again, this time to begin liquidating the investments she'd so carefully nurtured. It was a surprisingly complex process, but the bank manager, who remembered Grandma Iris fondly, was incredibly helpful. He walked me through setting up new accounts at a national bank, accounts my parents would have no knowledge of, let alone access to. With the full scholarship confirmed, my next priority was housing. I spent hours online researching apartments and student dorms in my new university city. I found a small furnished studio a short walk from campus, signed a lease electronically, and paid the deposit and first month's rent from my new untouchable account. Each click of the mouse, each signed document was a nail in the coffin of their deception. The most crucial step, however, involved something Grandma Iris had left me besides money: a thick envelope labeled for Skylar to be opened when you are truly ready to stand on your own 2 feet. Inside, along with personal letters and old photographs, were legal documents meticulously organized. There was also a business card for a lawyer, Solomon Graham, Esquire, a good man, honest. He helped me with my affairs. Trust him. A handwritten note from Grandma Iris read, "I made an appointment." Solomon Graham's office was downtown in a modest but professional building. He was an older gentleman with kind eyes and a reassuringly calm demeanor. I laid out the documents Grandma Iris had left, my voice steady as I explained my situation, omitting, for now, the full extent of my family's betrayal. Focusing only on my need to understand the legal papers, he examined the documents carefully, his expression thoughtful. "Your grandmother was a very astute woman, Skylar," he said finally, looking up at me over his spectacles. "She clearly loved you very much and wanted to ensure your future." "She did," I said, a lump forming in my throat. "This inheritance," he tapped the financial statements, "is quite straightforward. It's yours, unequivocally." But this he picked up a separate, thicker document, a deed of trust with several highlighted clauses. "This is rather interesting. It pertains to your grandmother's original investment in your family's home." My breath caught. "The house?" "Indeed," Solomon confirmed. "It appears your grandmother provided a significant portion of the down payment for your current family residence many years ago, structured as a loan with specific conditions. According to this, upon her passing, her share was to be held in trust. And there's a rather compelling clause here. If upon your 18th birthday, her explicit educational wishes for you, which she outlined in a separate letter also here, were not being honored by your parents, then her full share of the property plus accrued interest legally transfers to you." My jaw practically hit the floor. Grandma Iris hadn't just left me a safety net. She'd left me a tactical nuke. So if they, for example, diverted funds meant for my education, I began my mind racing. Solomon's eyes met mine, a flicker of understanding in their depths. "Precisely. If her clearly stated desires for your university education were deliberately obstructed, this clause would be triggered. You would have a legal claim to a significant portion of the equity in the family home." A slow, cold smile spread across my face. It was more perfect, more devastatingly effective than anything I could have orchestrated myself. That evening, as I was studying the Northwood brochures at the kitchen table, Dad walked by and patted my head. "Good girl, Skylar. We knew you'd understand our sacrifice." We're proud of how you're handling this." The hypocrisy was a physical weight almost unbearable. I just smiled thinly, a silent promise in my eyes that he couldn't read. The day they expected me to sign those loan papers, the day they thought they had finally definitively clipped my wings, was fast approaching. And I couldn't wait. The air in the house crackled with a strange, brittle energy. Tomorrow was loan signing day, as I'd morbidly dubbed it in my head. My parents were almost giddy with relief, their smiles a little too wide, their pats on my back a little too enthusiastic. They thought they were at the finish line, their problem, me, neatly solved and packaged away. My bedroom, however, told a different story. It was subtly barer. Over the past few weeks, under the guise of decluttering and donating old things, I'd been systematically siphoning my most important possessions to Leah's house. Clothes, books, sentimental items, my laptop, all varied over in unassuming duffel bags and boxes labeled charity. Leah, bless her loyal heart, asked a few questions, just stored everything in her spare room, her expression a mixture of concern and fierce support. She didn't know the full extent of my plan, only that I was deeply unhappy and looking for a way out. Tonight, my main suitcase, hidden in the back of my closet, held the essentials for my immediate escape. A few changes of clothes, toiletries, my phone charger, and every important document I possessed, including the acceptance letter for my scholarship and the copies of Grandma Iris's legal papers Solomon Graham had prepared. I sat at my desk, the room quiet except for the frantic thumping of my own heart. The letter I'd leave behind lay before me, written and rewritten countless times until every word was cold, precise, and utterly damning. It detailed everything: my knowledge of their theft, the bad investment lie, Cameron's fully funded startup, courtesy of my education fund. It outlined how Grandma Iris's foresight had not only secured my true education, but also armed me. "You told me I was resilient," I'd written. "You were right. More resilient than you ever imagined. While you were congratulating yourselves on your cleverness, I was securing my future. The one you tried to steal. I have a full scholarship to a university you don't even know the name of in a city far from here. My bags are packed. By the time you read this, I will be gone." The final paragraph dealt with the house. Grandma Iris was always smarter than you gave her credit for. She made provisions. Solomon Graham will be in touch regarding her share of this house, which, due to your failure to honor her educational wishes for me, is now legally mine. I believe the term is financial misdirection. Consider this my contribution to Cameron's next genius idea. My hand was steady as I signed my name. Then I carefully signed the document Solomon had couriered over earlier that day, the formal assertion of my claim to Grandma Iris's share of the family home. He'd instructed me to leave them with the letter. A strange calm settled over me. A quiet eye in the storm of my emotions. There was sorrow, a deep, aching grief for the family I thought I had. The love I now knew was conditional and manipulative. But beneath it, there was a grim satisfaction. A sense of impending justice that was almost exhilarating. I took one last look around the room that had been my sanctuary and my prison. The posters on the wall, the books on the shelves, remnants of a girl who had trusted too easily, hoped too much. This house wasn't a home anymore. It was a museum of their lies, a monument to my stolen childhood. Dinner was a surreal affair. Mom chatted about Cameron's latest startup breakthroughs. Dad pontificated about the value of practical experience I'd gained at community college. Cameron himself was insufferably smug, already acting like a Silicon Valley tycoon. I ate mechanically, nodding at the right moments, my mind miles away rehearsing my departure. "Early night for me," I announced, pushing my plate away. "Big day tomorrow. Right?" "That's right, sweetie," Mom said, beaming. "Get a good rest. We'll tackle those loan papers first thing after breakfast." "Can't wait," I said, my voice devoid of any discernible emotion. Later, long after the house had fallen silent, I moved. Each step was measured. Silent. I slipped on my jacket, picked up my pre-packed backpack, the one containing my immediate escape essentials and the devastating letter. The larger suitcase was already in the trunk of my old beat-up car, which I'd lent to Leah for the week, parking a street away from my house facing the direction of the highway. The front door lock clicked softly as I turned the deadbolt. The cool night air hit my face, smelling of freedom. I didn't look back. I walked quickly, silently, down the driveway and along the quiet street. My chariot, as I'd come to think of it, was waiting. Back in my room, on my perfectly made bed, lay the letter, a silent testament to their betrayal and my escape. The highway unspooled before me, a ribbon of asphalt leading to a future I was finally claiming. Hours had passed since I'd slipped out of the house, the darkness of night slowly giving way to the first pale streaks of dawn. My old car, bless its reliable engine, hummed steadily, eating up the miles. I was running on adrenaline and a thermos of coffee Leah had insisted I take as the sun climbed higher, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I couldn't help but imagine the scene unfolding back home. Mom, calling up the stairs in her cheerful morning voice. "Skylar? Breakfast? Don't want to be late for those loan papers." Her calls would grow more insistent, tinged with irritation when I didn't appear. Then Dad, impatient, probably already dressed in his work attire, would stomp to the foot of the stairs. "Skylar, let's get a move on. These things won't sign themselves." The silence from my room would be their first clue. Confusion would morph into a flicker of unease. Mom would probably be the one to open my bedroom door expecting to find me still asleep, perhaps feigning illness to avoid the inevitable. Instead, she'd find an empty room. A perfectly made bed. A room that felt too tidy, too sparse. The absence of my usual clutter, the missing posters, the gaps on the bookshelves where my favorite novels used to be. Panic would start to set in. A frantic search of the house, my name echoing through the rooms, growing louder, more desperate. And then one of them would see it. The white envelope, stark against my dark blue comforter. My letter. I pictured Mom's hand trembling as she picked it up, Dad peering over her shoulder, Cameron probably lounging nearby, annoyed that his breakfast was being delayed. I could almost see their faces as they read, the initial bewilderment giving way to dawning horror, their eyes scanning the words, the carefully constructed sentences that laid bare their deceit. Every penny from her education account. Grandma Iris's fund has secured my future. A full scholarship to a university far away. By the time you read this, I will be gone. I imagine Dad's face purpling with rage, Mom's collapsing into a mask of disbelief, and then, perhaps, a flicker of fear. Cameron. Cameron would be the interesting one. His arrogance would likely curdle into fury as he realized the implications for his precious startup built on the foundation of my stolen dreams. The kicker, of course, would be the part about the house. The mention of Solomon Graham. The revelation that Grandma Iris's final act of love for me was also a perfectly aimed strike at their financial stability. Their shock would be immense. The carefully constructed world they'd built, propped up by lies and my stolen inheritance, would be teetering on the brink. A wave of something dark and satisfying washed over me. It wasn't joy. Not exactly. It was colder than that. The grim satisfaction of a carefully laid plan coming to fruition. My phone, an old burner I'd bought with cash and planned to discard at the next state line, started buzzing relentlessly in the cup holder. Caller ID. Mom. I let it ring. It stopped, then immediately started again. Dad, then Cameron. A barrage of calls one after another. Then the texts started flooding in. "Skylar, where are you? This isn't funny." "Mom, answer your phone right now, young lady." "Dad, what the hell is this letter? What have you done?" "Cameron." I let them all go to voicemail. A small, bitter smile playing on my lips. Their panic was a distant noise, already fading behind me with every mile I drove. I was free. The weight that had been crushing me for weeks was lifting, replaced by a heady mix of liberation and a touch of apprehension for the unknown ahead. But it was an excited apprehension, not the fearful kind. Then, a new text pinged. This one was from Leah. "OMG, Sky. They found the letter. Your mom just called my mom. Hysterical. All hell is breaking loose over there. Your dad is shouting. And Cameron is literally screaming about his funding. He sounds like he's going to explode." "What did you do?" I read Leah's text, and the bitter smile widened. Exactly what I needed to do, I thought, as I pulled into a gas station, ready to ditch the burner phone and continue my journey towards a life they couldn't touch. The full force of my departure and Grandma Iris's meticulously laid legal groundwork hit them like a Category 5 hurricane. While I was settling into my new small apartment hundreds of miles away, unpacking the boxes Leah had shipped to a P.O. box I'd set up, their world was imploding. My letter, with its cold, hard truths about my financial independence and my new life secured by a full scholarship, was just the opening salvo. The real bombshell, I later learned, through carefully relayed snippets from Leah, who was getting frantic secondhand updates from her mother, who was getting earfuls from my hysterical mother, was the arrival of Solomon Graham. He didn't just call. Oh, no. Grandma Iris had clearly taught him the value of making an impact. Solomon, bless his professional soul, had a process server deliver the official legal notice regarding my claim to Grandma Iris's share of the family home itself. Not just a vague threat in a letter from a runaway teenager, but a legally binding document stamped an official landing on their doorstep. The implications were immediate and catastrophic for them. They were faced with two options: either buy me out of my substantial share of the house, money they demonstrably didn't have, especially since they'd funneled my entire college fund into Cameron's pockets, or sell the house and split the proceeds according to the trust terms. Their comfortable upper-middle-class life, the very foundation of their social standing and Cameron's entitled aspirations, was suddenly resting on quicksand. Cameron's fully funded startup, the one he'd been so arrogantly boasting about, hit a brick wall so hard it probably left a dent. Dad, it turned out, hadn't just stolen my college fund. He'd likely been leveraging the equity in the house, or at least counting on it as a substantial safety net for Cameron's venture. With my claim suddenly tying up their primary asset, any further access to that capital was gone. Banks don't like lending against properties with messy legal entanglements and disputed ownership. Leah's updates painted a vivid picture. "Your mom called my mom again, just sobbing," she texted one evening. "Apparently your dad tried to reason with Solomon, then he started yelling. Solomon just calmly told him the terms of the trust were ironclad, and that your grandmother had been very specific." The shock apparently morphed into pure, unadulterated fury. Dad, whose carefully constructed facade of the responsible family man was now shattered, reportedly went on a rampage. He blamed Mom for not controlling me better. He blamed Grandma Iris for her meddling from beyond the grave. He blamed me, of course, for being ungrateful and vindictive. Mom, according to Leah's mom, swung between hysterical weeping and screeching accusations. She kept wailing about how could I do this to them, Leah typed, followed by a string of eye-roll emojis, like, seriously? And, Cameron. His reaction was apparently epic. He lost it, Leah reported, screaming that his entire future was ruined, that his investors would pull out, that I'd sabotaged his one big chance. He actually tried to call me, demanding I fix this. I blocked his number. Their arrogance crumbled with breathtaking speed, replaced by a desperate scrambling panic. They started calling distant relatives, trying to borrow money, trying to find a way out of the pit they dug for themselves. But Grandma Iris's legal trap was too well constructed. There was no easy escape. The news of their sudden, inexplicable financial difficulties began to leak out into their social circle. The carefully curated image of the successful Richards family started to fray at the edges. Whispers followed them. Dad, in a last-ditch effort to salvage his reputation and perhaps intimidate me, apparently, tried to publicly discredit me, telling anyone who would listen that I was a troubled, dishonest girl who'd run off after stealing from them. But Solomon Graham was ready. He issued a brief, carefully worded statement to a few key people Dad had tried to influence, hinting at significant financial misdirection concerning a minor's educational trust and potential legal ramifications for those responsible. It was vague enough to avoid slander but pointed enough to shut Dad down fast. The implication that they were the ones who had acted improperly, possibly illegally, was clear. The whispers changed direction. The first real taste of karmic justice even experienced from afar was undeniably deeply satisfying. It wasn't just about the money or even the house. It was about them facing the direct, unavoidable consequences of their greed and their cruelty. They had gambled with my future, and now, finally, the house was calling their bluff. The dust began to settle not in a gentle drift, but more like the aftermath of a controlled demolition. My new life took root quickly. The university was challenging, exhilarating. I threw myself into my studies, joined a debate club, and even started volunteering at a local literacy center. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. I made friends, real friends, who knew me as Skylar, the focus student, not Skylar. The family disappointment. News from home, I could barely call it that anymore, came in sporadic bursts, mostly through Leah, who acted as a reluctant, heavily filtered conduit. The sale of the house was inevitable. Solomon Graham handled everything with quiet efficiency. There were no dramatic courtroom showdowns, just the steady, grinding mechanics of the law. The closing happened. The proceeds were split according to Grandma Iris's precise instructions, and my substantial share was transferred directly into a trust account Solomon helped me set up, managed by a financial advisor he recommended. Untouchable. Safe. Mine. They moved into a rental across town, Leah told me during one of our video calls. Her expression, a mix of pity and something else, perhaps a touch of awe at the sheer totality of my victory. It's small. Cameron had to move back in with them. His startup, from what I hear, is basically dead in the water. No funding, no fancy office, no buzz. Just him in his tiny new bedroom, probably blaming the world. I nodded, absorbing the information. The sweet, sharp tang of revenge I'd craved had a complex aftertaste. There was satisfaction. Yes. A profound sense of justice served. But there was also a lingering sadness, a hollow ache for the family I had lost, or perhaps more accurately, the family I'd finally accepted I never truly had. They had made their choices, their priorities clear, and I, in turn, had made mine. There were no tearful apologies, no attempts at reconciliation from their end, not really. Just a few bitter, accusatory voicemails in the early days, which I deleted without listening to fully. Their pride, it seemed, was as inflated as their sense of entitlement. Their social standing, once a source of immense pride for Mom and Dad, was reportedly in tatters. People talk. And the story of how the successful Richards family had imploded, how their bright daughter had vanished and their golden boy's ambitions had crashed was too juicy to stay quiet for long. They were isolated, their carefully constructed world reduced to a cramped rental and whispered gossip. I didn't regret my actions. Not for a second. My resilience, the very quality they'd so casually exploited, had become my greatest weapon, my shield, and ultimately my salvation. They tried to break me, to mold me into something small and manageable. Instead, they'd forged me in the fire of their betrayal. On crisp autumn evening, I stood on a small stage in the university auditorium, a certificate in my hand, a warm flush on my cheeks. I'd won an award for a research project in my ethics seminar, ironically, on the long-term societal impacts of financial fraud. The applause was a warm, genuine wave. My new friends were beaming in the front row. As I looked out at the supportive faces, I thought of my parents' words, overheard through Cameron's slightly ajar door. Words that had once been a dismissive assessment of my ability to endure their cruelty. She'll manage? She's always been resilient. A small, genuine smile touched my lips. Yes, I managed. My resilience hadn't just helped me survive. It had helped me build a future they couldn't touch. A life filled with purpose and genuine connection, while theirs, built on a foundation of deceit and favoritism, had crumbled under its own weight. Their better investment in Cameron, funded by theft and lies, had yielded nothing but loss and bitterness. My inheritance from Grandma Iris, coupled with my own determination, had yielded a future brighter than I could have ever imagined on that devastating day my world imploded. And that, I realized, was the sweetest justice of all.